On September 22, 2015, a little past 9 a.m., police received a disturbing call from a man near Cormac, Ontario. The caller reported that someone with a gun had entered his house and his mother's life was in danger. Police quickly sprang into action and arrived at the scene. However, it was already too late. When the officers entered the house, they were met with a horrifying scene. A woman was found lying lifeless in the kitchen with chilling signs of a brutal act. No one could have imagined that this single homicide would unravel into a series of brutal events, shocking both investigators and everyone connected to the people affected. The story began in the house at Foymount Road. 48-year-old Nathalie Warmerdam was in the kitchen having breakfast, and her 20-year-old son, Adrien Warmerdam, was lying on the couch just outside. The things felt calmer that morning until Adrien heard his mother getting startled in the kitchen. At first he brushed it off, but Nathalie's voice started rising more and more. At one point she began screaming at the top of her lungs. Adrien jumped out of the couch, and at the same moment he saw his mother running towards him. But she wasn't alone. There was a man following her closely with a firearm. Sensing the danger, Adrien quickly jumped out of the window, and as he did, he heard the gunshot inside the house. Fear and panic took over him as he hid between the bushes and dialed 911. He reported the dire situation to the police and stayed in the bushes until the police arrived at the scene. When police entered the house with Adrien, they found Nathalie on the floor, but the culprit had already escaped. Luckily, Adrien had already seen the face of the culprit and identified him instantly. He was the ex-partner of Nathalie, Basil Borutski, a 57-year-old carpenter and handyman. Without wasting a moment, police launched a massive manhunt that stretched across more than 100 kilometers. Their first move was to contact Basil's brother, Arthur Borutski, in hopes of tracking him down. At the officer's request, Arthur sent Basil a series of text messages trying to learn his location. After hours of searching and a brief exchange between the brothers, the breakthrough came. 5 tense hours later, police traced Basil to a Mazda 3 parked near Kinburn, Ontario. Arthur and a trained negotiator approached him carefully, urging him to surrender peacefully. Basil, surprisingly, complied with his brother and the negotiator's demand, exiting the vehicle. The officers quickly apprehended him, placed him in handcuffs, and transported him to the police station for interrogation. Detective Sergeant Kaylee O'Neill was assigned to interrogate Basil in what would become a 5-hour-long interview. Throughout the interview, Basil appeared to be self-pitying and rambling. The session began with O'Neill reading Basil his rights under Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The atmosphere quickly grew tense when Basil interrupted to correct the detective's pronunciation of his name, a small but telling moment that revealed his need for control.
And really all I want to know is, what's your understanding of why we're here right now, Basil? Is it okay to call you Basil? Is that what you normally go by?
No, Basil.
Detective O'Neill also asked Basil more than a couple of times if he wanted to speak to a lawyer, but he chose not to have one, which suggested that Basil was hopeless for his situation and thought nothing might save him then. But as the interrogation moved forward with time, it became clear that Basil's case was far from normal. It wasn't just a single homicide, but something more sinister, particularly his history and its connection with the present.
Were you able to get any sleep last night?
I have no idea if I slept on a steel bench. Can you imagine with my back what that feels like? No humanity whatsoever.
Did you mention anything to the guard about it?
The answer when I mentioned is that they're not supposed to be comfortable. When I asked them to loosen the handcuff because I had my hand cut off.
That was another careful move. By asking if Basil was able to sleep, O'Neill showed concern and empathy, a strategy to lower the suspect's defenses. But the question also gave him a chance to learn Basil's mental and physical state before digging deeper into the interrogation. When Basil mentioned his discomfort about sleeping on the steel bench, it showed that he was more concerned about his own pain instead of talking about what brought him there. By letting Basil vent about this without interrupting, O'Neill helped him feel heard. This made it more likely that Basil would open up about other, far more important details later.
I just told you you're a police officer and you're going by that stupid record that you guys made.
What is this record you're talking about anyway? Do you have a criminal record?
Oh, give me a break.
His irritated reaction to the question about his criminal record raised concerns, as it was defensive and dismissive. This wasn't just an annoyance, it's also a way to dodge the question. The detective, however, wasn't really looking for a simple yes or no. This question was designed to test Basil's reaction. But Basil's criminal record was far from normal. It was frightening to say the least. Basil was a violent, aggressive, and dangerous man, and his abnormal behavior dated back to 1982, when he first tied the knot with Marie Ann Mask. Together, they raised 3 daughters in a tense and violent environment under a marriage that lasted for about 26 years. His violence had escalated to the point where he ended up with domestic violence charges between 1985 and 1994. One of his daughters claimed that Basil had once threatened that he would burn down the family home. The threat came true, and the home was burned to the ground, but no charges were filed against Basil. He also faced domestic violence charges in 2008, becoming the last nail in the coffin of his relationship. However, he was able to dodge charges this time as well. It was due to the peace bond in court, as his marriage fell apart in 2011, resulting in a divorce. During the same year, Basil came across another woman named Nathalie Warmerdam, the same woman who was unalived. Nathalie was divorced and had 2 children, one of them being Adrien. She was a hospice nurse and was taking care of Basil's ill father. When they began dating, Basil moved down to her house on Foymount Road. Nathalie was simple and unaware of Basil's true intentions. At the time, Basil was trapped within legal troubles with his ex-wife. After hearing his fake sob stories, she became convinced that Basil was innocent, supporting him during the divorce proceedings. After almost a year, Basil's true colors began emerging as he threatened to end Adrien's life. Their relationship ended in July 2012, and he was arrested and charged with threatening to harm both Adrien and a family animal. Basil was released with a 2-year probation order and a 10-year weapon ban after spending less than 30 days in jail. In 2013, Basil began living in a farmhouse all alone near a scrapyard. This is where things took a turn. Even when he wasn't allowed to keep a firearm, he was able to find one. While exploring an old motorhome, he came across a shotgun sitting under the floorboards, but there was no ammunition. He soon found and collected semi-rusted shells from old cars and pickups. Basil secured the gun and the shells in a garbage bag and concealed them in the bush along the roadside. At the same time, he crossed paths with another woman, Carol Culleton, who was recently widowed. They soon started a casual relationship. Carol lived in North Gower and looked after a summer cottage outside Combermere on Lake Kameneskeg. By the winter, their relationship ended with no clear reasons. It was speculated that there was nothing serious from Carol's side, and she never called Basil her boyfriend or even a partner. She mostly expected him to do chores around the cottage. Soon after, he started living in the house at the Wilno home belonging to a new woman, Anastasia Kuzyk, who was a server at the Wilno Tavern restaurant. In December 2013, Basil got arrested and charged for burning down Anastasia's childhood heirlooms while also engaging in domestic violence out of rage. He was convicted of overcoming resistance by attempting to suffocate or strangle, assault, and mischief under $5,000. Basil spent 575 days in jail and was released with the same 2-year probation period. However, his 10-year weapon ban was turned into a lifetime ban. The court had asked him to sign a court order banning him from meeting Anastasia, but he didn't. He also failed to attend a court-arranged psychiatric session for partner abuse and domestic violence. Coming back to the interrogation room, what the detective told Basil next would completely shift the nature of the entire investigation. It wouldn't be only about the one homicide anymore, but something more sinister.
Well, one of the reasons I'm also here, Basil, is that I'm sure you're aware of the gravity of the situation and the seriousness of this investigation. I certainly am, given that you've been arrested for these crimes. And there are no more serious crimes than murder.
I didn't murder anybody.
That's right, you killed somebody. Correct? Killed 3 people, actually.
And that was the main aspect of this horrific case. It wasn't just a single homicide. but a series of homicides. Basil was involved in the of not one, but 3 women: Carol Culleton, 66, Anastasia Kuzyk, 36, and Nathalie Warmerdam, 48. From there, Basil quickly shifted the focus to a distinction he had built in his mind: the difference between kill and murder. He claimed that the Bible supported his view. This is where his reasoning became clear, but also absurd.
What's the difference between killing and murder?
Thou shalt not murder. Commandments.
By twisting the wording, Basil tried to argue that what he did wasn't murder because, in his mind, the people he attacked weren't innocent. He elevated himself to the role of judge, deciding who is guilty and who is not.
Just ask you a simple question: why did you kill these girls? That's it.
You're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say that.
Which words am I putting in your mouth?
What you just said.
Well, I can't really put a question in your mouth when I'm asking it. And it's interesting how you made the distinction between murder and killing. What that would suggest is that you have some kind of justification for what you've done, which it's also been my experience is always the case. In my career, I've not spoken to one killer who woke up that day and decided they were going to go and kill somebody.
When the detective pointed out Basil's choice of words, kill instead of murder, he highlighted the fact that Basil was trying to justify his actions. This approach gently cornered Basil. By pointing out the distinction he had made, the detective encouraged Basil to talk more, hoping that Basil would reveal the reasoning behind his crimes in his own words.
Now, sometimes this slice of the pie might be empty altogether, because you could do as you're doing right now and choose not to say anything at all, which is completely fine because that's your right, and you can do that. But the risk is, again, we go back to all these other sections of the pie and we use them to prove our case. And there's a chance that you can lose credibility in the end.
The detective used a simple, everyday picture to make a complex point easy to understand. The image turned the investigation into something Basil could see and weigh, instead of a heap of legal talk. This strategy lowers tension and makes the choices feel real.
I want you to look into the past charges against me by those women, and I want you to do that proper investigation from the point of view of what really happened, and then have a retrial, a fair trial, and then we'll talk about reality.
On a psychological level, Basil's reactions showed his need to control the story and protect his image. Asking for a fresh look at old charges is a way to rewrite his role from aggressor to someone who got attacked instead. It's also a sign of someone who wants validation, not truth. In short, the metaphor is a low-pressure weapon. It simplifies the stakes, forces the suspect to choose, and nudges them toward giving their side while making it clear that silence or untruths will hurt their credibility.
You want from me, you can get by simply doing the proper investigation for the past. I was put in jail twice, wrongfully.
If you were looking at this investigation, if you were looking at the allegations against you and the evidence, and the content of this case, what would you think about what you've done here and how you're portraying yourself? You're a reasonable guy. What would you make of all this if you were looking at it from the outside in? Would you like to sit back and watch this video of you talking about how, I don't know how many years ago, some investigation went bad for you, some assault investigation, when you're here under arrest for killing 3 women?
Psychologically, it said a lot about him. He wanted his story told the right way. He wanted someone else to validate him. Calling for a fresh investigation would let him play the victim again. It would protect his image and give him a reason to refuse direct answers. I'll talk after you prove I was wronged. Tactically, the demand is conditional cooperation. He offered information only if the authorities first did what he asked.
On video, how nonchalant and non-interested you look for these cameras right now, when 3 women are dead because you killed them?
Nonchalant.
Well, I mean, that's the adjective that comes to mind right now.
I'm happy for you. You're not.
You don't have to be happy for me, because what's going to happen is when I'm done here, Basil, when I'm done talking to you, I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk out of this room.
By asking whether Basil wanted people to see him acting calm and uninterested while 3 women lie dead, the detective highlighted the choice Basil had: tell his side now or let other people tell it for him. It nudged Basil toward talking because silence would let the public form a harsh view. This tactic can make a suspect feel smaller and more exposed. For someone who craves control or sympathy, being told that others will see them as cold or uncaring is a powerful prompt to speak up and explain themselves. It plays on fear of judgment more than fear of punishment.
2 ex-girlfriends of yours?
3.
3? No, I don't think Nathalie was. I think she turned you down, right?
I lived with her for 3 years. What are you talking about? Paid for half the farm. Work on it.
Sorry, Anastasia is the one that turned you down.
Turned me down.
She's quite a bit younger than you, too. You're not the first guy to be turned down, though.
I wasn't turned down by Anastasia. I was dating Culleton, and I was working in Anastasia's house.
By saying 2 ex-girlfriends and implying Anastasia turned him down, the detective was gently poking at Basil's version of events, testing for cracks in his story. This is a common interrogation technique, planting alternative versions to see how the suspect reacts. The detective specifically brought up rejection, which was a sensitive point for Basil. This could provoke defensiveness or over-explaining, which often leads to revealing details.
These girls, Basil, because they're not going to get their comeuppance in court. They're going to lie and they're going to escape responsibility.
If you're a cop, you should know that people that use the system are guilty.
This exchange showed how the detective wasn't just collecting facts. He was testing Basil's self-image and his story's credibility. By suggesting rejection and lying, he nudged Basil into revealing more about his mindset, particularly his resentment of women who he felt betrayed or misrepresented him. The detective essentially invited Basil to confirm whether the homicides were an act of justice or revenge, because the women escaped responsibility in court.
If the community
hurt you so badly that you had to
if the community wanted to know, they would start an independent inquiry and look into the past. How did it ever evolve to get to this? Because Basil Borutski is a kind, caring, God-fearing human being. So how
You know
did
what?
it get there?
That is a point we agree on.
We need to go back to the past and find out how could this have happened.
For a detective, this response was revealing. It showed Basil still framing himself as a righteous actor rather than a criminal. He was framing the homicides as a side effect of a broken system, not as his deliberate choices. By talking about qualities like kindness and faith, he was trying to imply moral credibility, insisting that a person of such values couldn't possibly commit the acts he's accused of. However, his justifications and storytelling exposed the contradiction under that self-image. He recounted incidents, building a deck for Carol, who rejected him, accusing others of theft, claiming to have been beaten or framed, and presenting himself as someone who was wronged.
First call, he says, we're not going to do anything about it. It's a such sensitive situation. Sensitive? She stole my tractor and sold it. What does that make her out to be? And police protected that theft. Corruption, man, corruption. Another police officer, Miller, are you writing them down?
Yep. Do you know his first name?
No, I never ran into much with him.
Pembroke or OBB?
Killer.
Okay.
I got beaten with a baseball bat in the field. I didn't know why I was getting beaten. And
in 2015, Basil relocated to the Renfrew County Social Housing Complex at 5967 Palmer Road in Palmer Rapids. During the same year, he met Carol once again and tried to revive their relationship. In desperation, he even offered to do odd jobs at her cottage. Carol's friends noticed him in the cottage and asked Carol to be careful. Even when asked not to, Basil began doing unwanted work around the cottage, for example. building a deck without even asking. He often showed up at the cottage unannounced and uninvited. He even followed Carol to her North Gower home after collecting the address from a Christmas card. He was there unexpectedly and uninvited, leaving everyone shocked. Carol's friends once again noticed his strange behavior and told Carol that she had a stalker. What appeared to be a peaceful rejoice at first soon turned violent. It was the Labor Day weekend's late-night dinner when Basil saw Carol sharing a personal moment with another man. His anger escalated to the point where he ended up ripping apart a flower bed and then left. He later visited that man at his house and told him about his feelings for Carol, but it wasn't just Carol he talked about. He also mentioned Nathalie and Anastasia. On September 8, 2015, Carol ended the already crumbling relationship with Basil on a phone call. This triggered an intense reaction from Basil as he burst out in a series of text messages. One of them read, "You have ended our friendship." Carol pleaded with him, saying, "Please stop." But Basil kept up with long, ranting texts and calls for several days. He even sent her handwritten letters. She shared her situation and the text messages with her friends, who asked her to report it to the police, but she never had a chance to do so. On September 20th, Carol sent him a message. "My friend and I are back together. Please don't bother me." Basil became devastated as he received that message and told her she was a cruel, vindictive, self-centered human being. He ended the conversation with, "Karma will take over." Basil had been getting sessions with probation officer Caroline Royer. With her, Basit used to share his financial, transportation, and housing issues. Transportation issues stemmed after the court banned him from driving. However, he had found a solution to that problem. Basil would often borrow a car, a silver Chrysler Cirrus, from his neighbors, as many as 10 times in a week. The day after, Basil went to Carol's cottage in the same car and directly confronted her for her behavior. Carol then tried to humiliate Basil by saying that she and her new boyfriend see Basil as the BF, the best friend who will do anything. They made a joke out of it and laughed. In a fit of rage, Basil headed back to his residence and told his neighbors that he caught his girlfriend in bed with another man. He then shared a few drinks with the same neighbor while oddly discussing the Bible passages with him, like the difference between and murder. He told his neighbor that he believed in that type of Bible and he would show it to the judge as well.
He said, "Basil, it's psychological. She's more like your daughter. She's more like your daughter's age. You see her as your daughter." It was actually a turnoff. But in court, when they asked her if we had a relationship, she said yes.
Instead of simply denying the relationship, he provided unnecessary and graphic details, which often occurs when someone is trying too hard to sound truthful. His attempt to use his doctor as proof is another example of him searching for outside validation, as if needing someone else to confirm his story makes it more believable. By calling her a liar and saying she took off with another guy, Basil revealed bitterness and rejection, emotions that seemed to fuel his anger toward women in general. His language turned emotional when he said he gave her his last peanuts, a phrase meant to show sacrifice, but that really exposed how he kept score in his relationships. By inventing this event, he wasn't just venting anger. He was reshaping reality to make himself look like someone bearing constant mistreatment and bad luck.
I don't even remember going to sleep, and then I woke up, and I don't even know if I drank coffee. I just went out of the house, and I remember at one point thinking about a zombie, and I remember I was confused, and I remember saying the Our Father, Hail Mary, over and over and over, and I was driving, and I said, I was talking to myself out loud, or I think I was.
This response helped him in 2 ways. First, it distanced him from intentional responsibility. By framing his actions as something done in a daze or trance, he was implying he wasn't fully in control. Second, it showed himself as someone under the forces larger than him, the justice system, God's will, or even his own confused mind. For an interrogator, this moment showed that Basil was trying to soften how his actions would be perceived. Instead of, "I chose to do this," the message became, "I watched this happen, confused, like a nightmare, which shifted him from being an active perpetrator to a passive witness of his own crime. By his logic, taking the lives of people he views as guilty does not count as only as kill, which he framed as acceptable under God's rules. This moment was powerful because it showed how deliberate and rational his thinking actually was. He wasn't claiming confusion. He was offering a clear, rehearsed explanation of why he saw himself as innocent and those women as deserving. The description of himself is chilling. Despite his claims of confusion, Basil recounted specific actions in sequence: breaking a window, unlocking the door, and attacking with a cable, which shows planning and control, not a dissociative fog. Here the detective used praise as a tool to keep Basil talking. By calling him truthful and a good person, the detective was not actually confirming Basil's innocence. He was strategically reinforcing Basil's self-image to lower his defenses. This is a classic interrogation technique. Appeal to the suspect's sense of morality or ego so they feel understood, then they're more likely to reveal details. Basil left his home armed with a shotgun and driving a car borrowed from his neighbor. His first stop was 670 Kameniskeg Road, where his former partner Carol Culleton lived. When Carol saw him arrive unexpectedly, fear took over and she ran inside, trying to protect herself. But Basil shattered a window with his elbow, forced his way in, and restrained her, ending her life in a brutal act. Afterward, he emptied her purse, took her car keys and cell phone, and left the scene in her Mazda 3, abandoning the borrowed car behind. From there, Basil drove 33 kilometers to Wilno, heading toward another ex-partner, Anastasia Kuzyk. The moment Anastasia saw him inside her home, she screamed in terror. Her sister, Eva, rushed downstairs to help and saw Basil retrieving his shotgun from the car. Eva hid behind the kitchen counter as Basil re-entered the house and claimed Anastasia's life. Only after committing these two horrific murders did Basil make his way to Foymount Road, where Nathalie Warmerdam lived. There, he carried out his final attack, taking yet another life before fleeing once again.
I just drove in, walked in the door, she was sitting there, she went around the corner, I followed her, boom, walked out. That's it.
For the detective, this shift from rambling, self-righteous explanations to a cold signal of just how normalized violence had become to him by this point. It's one of the clearest indicators in the interview of Basil's mindset during the third homicide.
Time is what I'm getting at. Right now, me and you in this room, empty. Would you take it back if you could?
Of course you would. Good.
That's an acknowledgement of regret on some level, even though earlier he argued the women were not innocent, and he was innocent. The contrast suggests that, at least in that moment, the self-righteous narrative breaks down, and what's left is a man feeling empty, guilty, or resigned. After this long interrogation, Basil had to appear in front of the court for his trials. The weapon used in the incidents was recovered from a field in Kinburn, Ontario, after Basil himself led the officers to its location. He was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder of Nathalie Warmerdam, Carol Culleton, and Anastasia Kuzyk, but Basil refused to enter a plea. The court had to enter a plea of not guilty on his behalf as he remained silent throughout the court proceedings. One of the most chilling testimonies was from Nathalie's son, Adrien, who recalled the incident details and how his mother had to suffer at the hands of Basil. Forensic and digital evidence, including home surveillance footage, a shotgun, and other evidence, was also presented in front of the judges, which further pushed Basil towards sentencing and conviction. The prosecution discussed Basil's long-standing criminal history and list of offenses. Finally, after 2 years, on November 14, 2017, Basil was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder of Anastasia, Nathalie, and 1 count of second-degree murder of Carol. It was because the court found that Carol's homicide wasn't at the threshold of first-degree planning. He was given 3 life sentences for each count and the possibility of parole after 70 years, 20 years for a single count of second degree, and 25 years each for 2 counts of first degree. After serving 6 years at Millhaven Institution, a maximum security prison located west of Kingston, Ontario, Basil died at the age of 66 of natural causes. This sums up the chilling story of Basil Borutski, a cold and ruthless perpetrator who met his fate while serving his sentences. This case reminds us of how built-up emotions can corrupt the human mind and push someone to the edge, to the point where they reveal their violent side. Would it be possible to stop Basil from committing such brutal crimes if Carol had reported him to law enforcement? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this documentary has left a mark on you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more powerful stories like this one.